All right. Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome into the Nifty Q Show. We're interviewing founders, leaders, and builders in the NFT and Web3 space. Today, I'm sitting with a very special friend of mine, one face that you do know, of course, Ronin the Collector, head of partner strategy at Gigantik. We'll be discussing the past, present, and future of NFTs, his work with large brands coming into Web3, improving the process of token gating, and much more. We're going to have ourselves a great convo. Sans a token frame, I think, though, Ronin. How are we doing today, my man? I had to hit it right up front.
Dude, I'm so angry. But no, this token frame's not playing nice today, man. Sometimes it does this thing. And look, you guys know I like to keep it real. I really like the token frame, but sometimes it does this thing where it decides it doesn't want to connect. And I wanted to show some RENGA off. So yeah, man, I'm doing good, dude. I'm doing really good. I was really impressed with the list that you put together of subjects for us to chat about during this. I'm like, all right, let's go. Feels like very professional. So that's what's up.
I do what I can here. I like to think I'm a little bit of a professional, semi-pro. But yeah, man, we're going to have a great convo, a lot of good topics to hit. The one that wasn't on the dashboard, but that I want to throw right at you is the one that you've been tweeting about in the last, I would say, 2 days, which is RENGA. It was going to be displayed on your token frame, but this project, what's so good about it? Why should people get in? It seems to be a one on your mind.
Yeah. So a lot of times people ask us, what do you look for in a project? Why do you invest in a project? What are the things that make you decide to get in, right? And I think these days it's been really iffy on what you should be, spending your time with and what you should be looking at. And so for me, I've been really like we've talked about on NFT Live, been kind of holding it straight, close to the vest, and haven't really put a lot into too many projects. And with RENGA, it's a little bit different. RENGA is by Dirty Robot. Dirty Robot is an old school artist. If you see some of his work, you've probably seen it before. I've seen lots of mass prints of his stuff. It's a style that's very unique, very distinct. And so it's actually a project that I jumped into. It's called, I think it's The Art of Seasons, if I remember correctly. And he launched it about a year ago, and he had these stages. And that's the reason why I ended up I bought a handful, 10 of them. And so essentially the art would reveal, and then you would take these reveals, and during these stages, you could advance them to a different season if you wanted to. And then you could take 4 of the same season at the end of the stages and meld them all together to make one big widescreen view of this scene, right? So you could collect the pieces or meld them together, create one big one.
It's like gamifying it.
Yeah. So tokenomics, right? But it was an artist that seemed to have done it all on his own. He had a really dope website. And so I bought in, and it was the first stage was supposed to happen, I think, in October of last year. And then I think it was early December or something. I was like, man, whatever happened to that project? And I looked into it, and nothing had happened. And then I think sometime around the holidays, early this year, they put out basically an update that said they're going to kind of reboot the whole project. And they were going to airdrop the Art of Summer, official this new collection, and you were going to get your free ones if you already had the collection, and then they would also do these additional mints. So I not only did I get my free ones, but I also bought in a couple mints, and the art was just banger, dude. And they also had this kind of burn mechanic that I think that they implemented, where if you had a special foil version, they would send it to you. And their prints are, check them out on Instagram. The prints are really, really high quality prints that if they have a gold strip in it, it's going to be a foiled strip, right? High quality stuff. So I saw it, I loved it. And then I sold at what I thought was kind of the top, right? And fast forward, I hadn't heard nothing. And then this week it's everybody's talking about RENGA. I look into it and I'm like, man, this looks familiar. And essentially they dropped these these black boxes to the art of seasons holders. And everyone who had one got this black box, and then they did this thing mechanic where, and this reminds me of wax, right? Like this reminds me of the early days. This is why, dude,
Don't
like I
jump the
got
gun.
sucked in, right?
Yeah.
And so you could burn the box and have a box opening, and it would open, it would reveal the art. And so now, still at this point, that's the way it works, right? I think there was, last time I checked, I think there was like 3,000 boxes or 4,000, somewhere in there, boxes that were still yet to be burned. But when you burn them, you get a Renga, and then the Renga is like the main collection. And dude, the art is so good, and I wish time would work, bro, but it's not even. It just gave up. I don't even know what it's doing anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It reminds me a little bit of like Ben Morrow's ability to like use seasons and kind of transition from one drop to the other, as opposed to just dropping something and it go completely flat just because you're trying to launch something, just to
right.
do it. So
I think you get this sense of there is a plan, right? Like when you look at other projects that have done really well, at least a handful of them, they definitely like come at you as well planned, right? Like regardless of whether or not they sell out, regardless of whether or not like they have this crazy sustained floor, they've got a plan. They're going to stick to it. And those are the projects I like to jump into. The last one that I did this, ridiculous aping in was Cyber Brokers, and that was months ago, and they have stuck to their guns. They have continued to produce really excellent, engaging content, and that to me is kind of what's fun. And I think that like with the bear market, a lot of people, they get down and people are, just really in the shitter about themselves, right? Like, and about what's going on, and see your self-worth go from whatever it was, which is probably an all-time high for 90% of us, down to a third of that, dude. And
yeah,
it's a mentally, it's a tough blow, but like, there's moments that I feel like are a little special, and this feels a little special. I've been watching the project. I saw, I do a lot of research, man, especially if I'm going to spend like an ETH or an ETH and a half on one asset, right? Like, and to be honest, man, I have 5 of them now. First one I bought
that's
at
a lot
like
of conviction.
0.6. Yeah, dude. I bought, the first one is like 0.68, I think. When the floor was like 0.5-ish, 0.55. I always look for the deals, always look for the rarities. We talked about that on NFT Live 2 days ago. And then I bought I bought 4 more over the past like 12 hours. I bought 3 this morning. I bought 1 last night.
In typical Ronin fashion, though, like that's what that's honestly like how you make the outsized returns. Though, is like you find the project that you have conviction in and you go balls deep in it. Like that's the way that you can find a quick return. Not to say that I'm trying to like get into a project to get a just returns. You're in it because you like it. The returns are an extra, of course.
Absolutely.
So.
I did the same thing, like I said, with Cyber Brokers. With Cyber Brokers, the timing was much worse.
Yeah.
It was at the top, right? Like I bought 4 Cyber Brokers all within 4 to 6 ETH a piece or something crazy like that. The floor I think is like hovering around 1, but like I don't regret any of that, man. I got 6 Cyber Brokers. The storytelling is cool. I've got all these parts for these mechs that's coming at me, right? And I'm ready for like when I get to build my mech based on all these pieces that I have. Right. And then I'll pawn off the other pieces as like, people make their mechs and people want to get involved and want to get into the universe that they're creating. Like the buzzword recently is storytelling NFTs, right? And these are at their core really strong brands and IP that I could see being, and I'm not saying any of this shit is guaranteed. Okay? I'm saying I'm hedging my bets, right? Like there's a couple of projects I say this about, but they all have potential of being, a Pokemon, any of those Harry Potter major brands that permeate culture and this wide variety of consumer base that can really be something in the future.
Yeah, so I want to move on into the episode, of course. So, like, thank you for dropping the alpha early in the episode with Renga. But I do have one last question as it's related to like this conversation that we're having, which is the storytelling NFT portion. Gifted, who's in the chat, I see him up there right now. He is doing his alpha morning show Monday through Thursday, and that was the topic of today's morning show was storytelling NFT. So, definition though of storytelling NFTs is the question that I have for you, because basically the way I was kind of perceiving it, but I might have, been wrong, is like just an NFT project that tells a story really well. But what is a requirement for an NFT to be a storyteller NFT? Just because I don't know too much about it. Do you have any insights there?
Oh man, I am not. I am the opposite end of a gatekeeper, right? So I don't like to put rails on anything. I think like when it comes to storytelling NFTs, though, in my opinion, I think that like the NFTs hold some aspect of the storyline within them. Whether that is they're capturing a moment, like the beginning of the genesis of a storyline that begins, and these are like kind of the core characters, or whether it's assets that play as voting tools to allow you to take part in a story, or whether each of them is their own character that you can leverage in a greater storyline, like my shirt or my sweater, Nuclear Nerds, right? Like I've got a couple nerds, and they leverage the ability they want everyone to really take ownership of those NFTs and those characters and give them life. They give you a place to give them a bio and flesh out their story, and then you can put those characters up to be part of other people's stories, and how do these stories come together and then become part of canon, right? Like when for anyone who's not a super geek when it comes to storyline and lore, canon means like it's officially part of the storyline, right? So imagine you're just a fan of Star Wars, and your Jedi is the one who gets this really cool story arc, whether it's a little like side piece, or whether they get to grace the Millennium Falcon for a moment. Like I think that that's the power of storytelling NFTs, right? Like you can I am ready for Nuclear Nerds season 8, where like I can then take my characters and be like, yo, these are OG characters. They've been around. They've seen the war since day one, and this is where their story is. And maybe there's this really cool story arc that then permeates like the brand and permeates what I'm doing and where other projects are at. Right?
It's an interesting phenomenon that we talk about storytelling in media. It always goes back to Star Wars. Like that seems to be a good example that everyone kind of points to. But guys, I want to welcome everybody into the Nifty Q show today, guys and gals. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're listening on podcast afterwards, of course, we're sitting here with Ronin the Collector. He is going to give us a lot of great knowledge, stories, what he's doing with Gigantik as the head of partner strategy. So it's going to be a good convo. Ronin, it's been a long time, man, that we've been in the space, and there's some friends we made along the way that I see in the chat, which is, some I'll get to you guys in a second. But Ronin, I want to get your take on your journey. I know that's a large question, but since 2019, NFTs have been your life. How do you encapsulate that without shedding a tear early on in the episode?
You already see it. You had to like talk about like, man, it has been a crazy ride, and I'm getting teared up because like I see names that have been there since the beginning, dude, and like it means so much for them to be here, and like so take a second, like Don XP, like dude, I appreciate you so much, even though like you like to grill me all the time about GSA. Don't worry about the GSA. The GSA is fine, man. It's in good hands. DJ Savage Prodigy. Cost effective, man, dude. I appreciate you so much, brother. GIF, obviously. And hold up, Hash, man. Hash Rhymes. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us and for the channel and for the community. I appreciate you so much. I know we don't get to like connect as much, like any of us, but like I appreciate y'all so much. So that's why I'm getting teary-eyed, and Q had to call it out. But what was the question?
How do you encapsulate your time in the past 3 years? Like, I think maybe I have a direct question that we can start off with, and then we can make it there. But what principles in your mind did you come into the space with that has changed over the past 3 years? Like, what is something that maybe you thought early on in NFTs that has shifted since you've gained all this experience and been in the space for so long? Did something turn out the way, or did not turn out the way you thought it would, and all of these things?
Man, that's a really good question. I asked you before we went live, and I don't think you heard me. I was like, have you ever thought about doing like long form? You should give this like a long form like platform, because like I feel like you generate really good questions. And letting them breathe, I think, is a lot of value. But yeah, man, how do I encapsulate it as being the craziest ride of my life. And I think that a lot of us can kind of understand that statement, right? Like I think a lot of us, especially who's currently here hanging out, and who's probably going to listen in the next 24 hours, because I know there's a lot of people who support and can't watch live or whatever. A lot of us probably would describe the last 24 months as like the craziest times of our lives. And I think I've learned a massive amount about myself, about the world, about business. A lot of opportunities have like opened up through that, right? And like getting the opportunity, and we'll get into like the story and where I'm at now versus where we started, right? Man, like, I think we talked about this at the beginning, like with the podcast. We're entrepreneurs. We're people who like kind of like, we don't really want to work for other people necessarily. We want to kind of like have a little freedom to be creative and innovate a little bit. Like I think like we understand technology, and so through that, it opened up this opportunity through Giglabs and my profession, and it's a startup, right? So I'm learning a lot about business, dude. Stuff that like you can't really be taught. People can like tell you, right? Like, and explain like this is what you're going to go through, or these are the things that you will experience during your journey. But until you actually experience them, like going through a round of funding, right? Like I wasn't like hitting the pavement, like that was somebody else's job, but like I watched these guys work hard putting together their pitch deck and like talking about their sales pitch and like going, bringing the team in on the meetings and asking, everybody at Gig, like, what do you think our value is? Where do you think like, we can expand and like creating a story, and then taking that story and being vulnerable and putting it in front of person after person after person after person. And saying like, I hope you believe in this the way I do. Right. And so you learn a lot through that. I've learned a lot of the process itself. I've learned a lot of the personality type that it takes to get there and to be accomplished, right? Like I really look up to the founders of Giglabs, because like these guys like just kind of had this idea to like mess around and play in this space, and they leveraged that and turned it into a full-time job, not only for themselves, but at this point I think we're at like 30 something employees, right? And that's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing. And you and I talked about that, man. Like we love to get to a point to where we can employ other people and give them other opportunities to like enjoy their life and their profession, and do something cool and fun and meaningful, right? Like I think a lot of us want to find meaning in life, and
I want to get into your work at Gigantik, but you've been in the space since basically the inception of NFTs being very popular, and it was different at the time. Like it was very much a fervor of we can see what's happening. Like there was hit after hit after hit. Has your conviction taken a hit at all in the bear market? Like, do you notice yourself acting different in a bear market? Is that a fair
absolutely
question?
Yeah, dude. I think for me, dude, for a lot of people, and we'll get to this, I know, the mental struggle, right? Of like seeing like, again, we all see this kind of crazy opportunity, both like, in careers and in your daily life, but also like financially, right? Like a lot of people saw this financial opportunity, and some people were able to capture that. Some people caught some of that value. Some people caught most of it. Some people didn't capture any, and now they're like learning the lesson of living through a bear, and having been through a bull and not taking their profit. So yeah, dude, there's a lot there. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of struggle, and I think the convictions that the thing that you have to remind yourself is that like your ability to have strong convictions and passion about anything, right? And in this case, we're talking about NFT projects, is something that you should always trust. But you have to understand that you're going to be wrong more often than you're going to be right. Right. But you're not going to be in the general sense that like most people would value success. So, you know, you got to learn, like, just keep trusting it, dude. Cause like you're going to hit. Like I had plenty of failures throughout this bear market, man, where I was like, this is going to be one that's going to get me some of that money back, man.
Yeah.
And it's none of them were the one.
It's typically like the end of the bull market too, right? That tail end of the bull market where you're like, oh, I don't think it's a bear. Like, oh, here's a cool project. And then it's like, oh no, all of these forces are working against this project. No matter what type of project it was, not going to do well. We've seen that lesson with, you know, other deeds. If you didn't get out of those at the tippy top, that one launched, you know, May, and that's not doing well, you know, unless you hit on some rares. But we'll talk on Bored Ape Yacht Club and all that stuff, but I want to stay on task with the kind of flow of talking about what lightning question, what you did before NFTs. And then we can kind of make our way there. But like, who was Ronin before you found NFTs?
Oh man, Alpha. Ronin was Richard.
Yeah, that's true too.
Ronin was Richard. Richard was right, like just a 30-something-year-old dad who was grinding hard. You know, I was a data analyst for a health insurance company that, you know, was a great job for what it was. It was a good you know, position to be in. It was a really chill job, but it was very repetitive. It was very not very stimulating. And so yeah, Richard was like definitely a different dude. And like you know, it's interesting to say it in that way, but I've talked about it a little bit like publicly. Like Ronin is a different guy than who Richard was, and that just comes from like, I created a Twitter handle one day that like I kind of threw together, right? I got some great positive feedback from people early on, like you, who were like, "Yo, that's a cool Twitter name," and I leveraged it, and it became kind of a persona, but it also became like kind of like this embodiment of like of someone who isn't scared to like chase their dreams and like try to accomplish their goals. And because I think like Richard, like, man, I tried this thing a lot, you know, like more than once, like trying to go and chase like my passion and make it a career, right? Yeah. Like how many, dude, and I'm sure everyone who eventually gets there will tell you it didn't happen the first time. You know, maybe one in 1,000, but like the most of the people who get to success will tell you they failed a lot. And I failed a lot. And I think that like Ronin allowed me to create a persona who was willing to go out there and try one more time. And it just so happened that one hit.
Well, it reminded me of kind of the narrative that we have in the NFT space, that kind of allowed us to be kids again. In a way, like those first couple weeks, those first months that I knew you, you were going so hard in Clubhouse. You were going so hard on Wax. And it was like for these collectible things that some people would look at it and be like, what are you doing? You know, but like in that time, we were very much experiencing like fun and creativity and all these things that normal jobs maybe don't get to do all the time. I don't mean to be like shitting on normies or anything like that, but that's what it made me feel like when I was watching. I was like, oh, this kid's like, or this guy has like become a kid again in a sense. Like he's allowed that to be some of his persona.
Yeah. I think, man, that is definitely a huge part of what got me interested, and also what like gave me the ability to like have this full blown conviction that like I didn't let anybody shudder. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, my wife thought I was nuts, bro. Like we've had this conversation, dude. Like, you know, at the beginning it was like, it's cool. I hear you. Yeah. These things, nifties or whatever. Right. Cool. And then she was like, wait, you want to do a podcast? And I was like, yes, you know, just like something we'll do like for a while. And 2.5 years later, we're still doing it. You know, we'll see what happens. And we didn't, what's cool is, man, we didn't really have crazy expectations. And then we saw the potential, And then when the community showed the fuck up and you really put all that effort behind launching the LADZ token, right? Like the social token early on that we was rocking until they got hacked.
Yeah.
But all of that, like, right, like it's just I don't know, man. It was just such a unique time and such a unique experience for all of us.
I have a Clubhouse question that I want to weave into this because I think it's again, you found a lot of fame on Clubhouse, fame in the community at least, and how that kind of looks at Twitter Spaces today, or how that compares to Twitter Spaces today. I know you went super hard on Clubhouse. I want to get your take on like why that failed, and then transition that to how you see Twitter Spaces today. Do you think that they need to continue to innovate there, or do you think it's pretty locked in, as opposed to Clubhouse, which really was a flash in the pan when it came to how long they were popular?
Yeah, I think Clubhouse started this social audio, right, revolution, and really, I think it brought a lot more people to the joy of consuming audio content, right? Like even like you look at like the timing. Obviously, it had a lot to do with COVID. It gave you a way to interact with other people in a safe environment where you're not breathing on each other, but have intimate conversations like you would as if you were sitting with each other. So I think like the timing of Clubhouse was very, very unique. I think it did help to like really push this social audio and podcast and the whole thing. Twitter Spaces ain't shit compared to the Clubhouse experience, and I've said that publicly. But I will say that one of the things we talked about while we were on Clubhouse and before Twitter Spaces like popped off was as soon as it launched, and it's had the rugging issues since. But as soon as it launched, like it was like it's just a matter of time, dude. Because something that we all need to understand in this space is that Uncle John, Aunt Jack, or whatever.
Aunt Jack. We're in 2022.
Hey, 2022, man. Grandpa Jill, whoever, right? Like they don't want any of the hurdles that we were willing to overcome for this experience. They don't care enough, right? Do they care? A little. And is that interest enough to get them to fall down a rabbit hole? Absolutely. But the friction needs to be as low as possible. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where that comes from.
Why does Twitter Spaces suck?
The experience is just like not as a streamlined. The way that you socially interact on there is clunky. The fact that like some people have emotes that other people don't is ridiculous. They took away my favorite emote, and why you give somebody an emote for 6 months and then it just disappears? Like it's just none of that feels good. It is going to continue to kill Clubhouse because the conversation is taking place where it should, right? Like it's where natively the conversation is happening. It's on Twitter. So that's where people are going to congregate. So it makes a lot of sense, and I just wish that they would like take Clubhouse, integrate the whole thing, steal it all, dude. Like take the stage, steal the way like, the people at the top work. Like it created a social environment to me that made a lot of sense. People can disagree. I'm not like a guru. That's not my my profession.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of my thoughts on Clubhouse versus Twitter. I miss the hell out of Clubhouse, dude.
Early Clubhouse definitely had a Clubhouse feel. It felt like you were in some like speakeasy almost, that you like got in the back door, or you were able to kind of listen to. And this happens on Twitter Spaces, but in those days it was like, oh my God, I'm in a room and I'm able to step up on stage with all of these like massive individuals in the space. Really, really cool times. Another thing that was big at the time, and we do a lot of teaching on this channel about it, is wax, right? Like we don't do a lot of teaching now, but back then it was huge, and you got your start there. So any thoughts on like early days wax as opposed to now?
Wax was early. I think that this NFT thing, the yacht clubs and the cool cats and the gutter gangs. That's not really where I think like NFTs, the digital asset, is gonna be in 5 years, right? Like I do think that we're looking at a couple different avenues that are going to be primary, and then you've got a lot of use cases, right? Like you've got tons of use cases like in logistics and real estate and things like that. But for the sake of the conversation, what Wax got right was it was just a digital collectible that was low cost, and it allowed people to engage in a fun way from their couch or their toilet or their car or the subway train or the bus or whatever, right? And it gave them to a place to congregate about something that they cared about. And ultimately, I think that what we're continuing to see, and you see this a lot in social media, right? And you're going to continue to see it, is this proliferation of like the community, right? Like Facebook's like groups were there for a long time, man, but it was just, a year or two ago that Facebook's actually started pushing groups and actually putting the tools there to build communities effectively within the application, right? That's what all these things do, is they give us the leverage to build these communities, right? Like even Twitter now, you have the ability to do the circle tweets, right? You have the ability to create a community hub or whatever, where it's a topic and like people can send tweets just to that topic, right? That thread of topics. I mean, everything is about building your tribe and how can they make that fun and interactive and easy. So I think that like NFTs are going to be a huge part of that as we move forward into like the future and the metaverse and whatever comes next for like Web3. Just seeing massive adoption right now.
Yeah, especially from the large brand piece, and they were early at that too, right? Like they brought a lot of brands in the space super early on before we even saw this PFP wave. There were large brands getting into the NFT collectible scene that was through that. Yeah, and it still is. It still is for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, or let's, I guess, start the conversation of what you're doing now with Gigantik, formerly Giglabs. I do want to have like the large brand conversation here as well. You obviously have been like working with these kind of Web 2 companies that are getting into the Web 3 space. You're having face-to-face conversations with them. So what are you guys doing at Gigantik now? And we can kind of flow from there.
Yeah. So for anybody who's not familiar what I do, like my day job, I do work for Giglabs. We have built the product Gigantik, and to Q's point, like that is eventually just, it's all going to be Gigantik at some point. And what is Gigantik? Gigantik is an NFT platform that allows brands to own their entire NFT experience. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you don't need a manifold, you don't need an OpenSea, you don't need anything like that. You can take that experience and do everything from minting to your secondary sales to your snapshots and airdrops, and now the big news that we announced just last week, which is the TokenProof integration, and which is super cool, a very seamless experience. You know what I mean? You should definitely I'll put you in touch with Fonz. Fonz is one of the co-founders of TokenProof. Man, when you dude, we talk about like what we've seen over the past 2 years. Talk about the adoption and the massive just growth, right? Like we talked about this hypothetically, but now we are to the point where I can go to an event, I can have my phone that's tied to my Web3 wallet securely, right? Like it's not anything that can be compromised. And when I get there, they can say, "Hey, are you a Bored Ape owner?" I sure am. Okay, well, let me authenticate that fact real quick. Okay, here's my phone. Pull it up just like you do any other card in your Apple Wallet, right? Feels exactly the same. It produces a QR code, and then they have the companion app. That app scans your QR code, and what it does is it then checks the wallet. The authenticator app is pre-programmed for whatever it's looking for, right? So in this case, it would be looking for a Bored Ape. And then it tells the person that has the authenticator app, yeah, green light, they've got this ape, or red light, they don't have what they're supposed to. And now I get to do whatever that experience opens up, right? On a surface level, that's just a straightforward. Now I get into an event, right? But when you take that and you present it to some really creative people, you come up with some cool experiences that then can leverage that simple technology and make it better, right? Like one of the things that we've really pushed and talked a little bit about and put a lot of emphasis on is the point of sale ability that we have, which means that if you are a massive brand like Starbucks or McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, where your consumers are currently scanning a QR code when they get there for rewards, right? We can build directly into that CMS. And you can do things like when they get there, if they're a Bored Ape holder, have them scan their phone, confirm, and then they get a discount.
So just to give people like more context here, what was the process before products like TokenProof came around? How did people handle that at events and things like this? Was it just like off the cuff, let me view it on your phone, and how do you authenticate all this stuff? Like, what did it look like before TokenProof came around?
Yeah, it was a ad hoc solution. However you wanted to like glue it together. I think for us, one of the things that we did was we executed a snapshot, right? Like we said, you had to have these assets at this time 2 days prior to the event. Then we took that snapshot and we matched it with their email addresses. Then we printed their email addresses or their names, whatever they wanted to give us. Then that was printed out, and then they had to come to the event, and then it was traditional. They showed us their ID. We checked the list. Are you on the list? Yes, you are. Okay, now we can give you whatever, right?
Yeah.
So what we did was we took all that and we got rid of it. TokenProof did, okay? Yeah. And they got rid of it, and they made it to where you just use your phone, bro. And like you go and you show it, and you can use it at the very surface level, or you can get down to the nitty gritty. You can say like they have to own 5 of these to get in, or you could say that they have to be, I'm going to throw a black hat party and only black hats can get in, right? And not only is this something that you can authenticate, you're doing it in real time, right? So that was the other thing. It's like, okay, if I hold this thing till midnight on Friday, then they're going to take a snapshot. Then I'm going to put it right up on the marketplace and sell it and hopefully make a quick buck before somebody realizes they can't do nothing with it. Right now it's saying you own this thing and you have to own it at the point of sale. You have to own it at that moment when you're getting your perk. And then once that happens, right, it facilitates further touch and further engagement post that engagement, that original, right?
I feel like when we have these discussions, there's this like 2-party system that is set up, which is basically one side saying you shouldn't token gate anything, and the other side saying, oh no, this is how you do value capture. This is how we do a lot of pieces. Like what is your side that you take in that argument? Should things be token gated more so than often, or should they not be token gated? I feel like that is a conversation and a debate that kind of rages with like basically the main utility of NFTs at this point, right? Like that a lot of it is that you can token gated Discord and get access there. Like how do you view this token gated debate?
It's a core aspect of the technology's utility. If you want to use it, it's there. I think it brings a lot of value to the asset, right? Like if the asset is now what we're encouraging is that you move all of these incentives and perk programs, right, and put them on the blockchain. Take them out of your walled garden experience, put them out into the open network, and let us do what we want with it, right? So for me, that's very much where like the superpower comes in. Like, that's where we're hoping to like steer the conversation is like now you can engage beyond just trying to sell them. We talked about this earlier this week, like mic drops, right? Like you can do something that entices your brand. It's crazy to think about, like, you and I BSing about this stuff 12 months ago and 24 months ago, and how brands could do these things, and now sitting at the table and telling brands this is how it works, and this is what you could do with it, right? And hoping to inspire some innovation.
So I know you're on some NDAs as well with some upcoming brands that are getting into the space, and I want to talk on the brands that you guys already have as kind of clientele. But lightning question here, of the brands that we've seen get into the space over the last 3-4 months, potentially, like really large brands, right? Starbucks has gotten in, Instagram has gotten in, Facebook or Meta got in a while ago. Which one has done it the best slash is going to have the most like hardest hit, I would say, just to put in quotations? And then which one is just like a complete dud in your mind? Like this doesn't move the needle at all for the industry. So lightning question there.
I think a majority are the latter. I think a majority are like, they're not going to move the needle. They were companies, brands, entities, whoever that saw an opportunity to replicate someone else's success, and they took that opportunity and ran with it. I do think there are brands that are doing some really cool stuff, like Starbucks. If you want to talk about who do I think is going to move the needle the most, I think Gifted brought this up on the show Tuesday. Like Starbucks is one of these massive brands, right? Like Apple is one of these massive brands that when you talk about who sets trends that then get adopted by an entire industry, like those are like at the tippity top. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to retail, like Starbucks is constantly implementing things that other like chains are like trying to replicate.
It's interesting that you don't say like a product like Instagram, but it kind of makes sense because what I'm getting from you is that you're looking at the NFT space more from like the utility side, like the actual functionable things that you can do with an NFT, whereas Instagram is very much in this like traditional way that people see NFTs, which is a Bored Ape that can be put up on a picture and
Flex,
things like the
digital ownership of. And look, I think that's huge, and I think that helps for like attractiveness, right? But like that still is, it's almost like what would be a good way of put it? I don't know. It's almost like saying like, hey, everybody, look, here's our secret code. Like, unless you have like the codex, like you don't really care, right? Like you'll walk by it a million times. People see the hexagons on Twitter and they don't give a shit.
Yeah,
right?
that
Like,
surprisingly
really
didn't
don't.
hit. That
like,
didn't hit as hard as I thought. I don't even have a hexagon, to be honest.
I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Like, I think that it will hold the weight that people assume it does when kinks get worked out, right? Like when you don't have the ability to replicate the main freaking NFT and then put it as your NFT, like all these little loopholes, right? But I do think it shows, it's a good example of how these layers, right, could be applied, and how it could be applied in a way that is subtle, but understandable for most people.
Guys, I want to kind of I'm taking Gift's word. I've attended the Alpha Show way too many times, but like re-ranch it here. I'm going to bring it back. Thank you so much for all the comments in the chat right now.
The chat is awesome.
Easy in Crypto, DJ Savage, Don R, Landers in the House, Xplow, Cost Effective, Machiavellian, Prodigy. A lot of you guys are commenting along with us, so I appreciate that. If you can leave a like, that does help it on YouTube. Retweet it on Twitter if you guys are listening there, and if you can rate the show on podcast form if you're listening there, that would really help. But yeah, sitting here with Ronin, we're talking large brands, essentially getting into space, conversations he's having. You guys are working with Flow, so want to have that kind of discussion because I do feel like Flow again is very much in that wax realm of doing well with business development on the larger brands, right? Like Ethereum is very much open source. It feels like, brands come and go as they please, in a sense, whereas Flow and Wax are very very centered on their mission to bring in larger brands. Is that fair to say? How has your experience been there with Flow?
Yeah, I think like what Flow did and did well is it gave brands the ability to onboard in a way that they're used to, right? So you work with us and you have access to, you can use whatever you want, but like primarily we work with the Dapper wallet or we work with the Blockdo wallet. Both are integrated into our backend systems. We can run payments through them. Both facilitate credit card payments. Dapper wallet is a super streamlined experience, man. Anybody can sign up with a email address or their cell phone number, and then set up two-step authentication. and then purchase an NFT right there from their phone with Apple Pay. That is how you get adoption. And that is kind of our mission. We're trying to like just break all those barriers, right? Like our entire platform, you can use it no code. You don't have to understand, like all these like, languages and stuff like that. You go in and it feels like Squarespace. It's drag and drop, and it's pretty nutty to see that like somebody can literally execute, an airdrop in 30 seconds, right? And so that's why I think like it was important for us to kind of start our building and really focus on flow as a blockchain, because it does leverage that. And for the clients that we're calling, the people who were looking to do business, that was one of the biggest concerns is how easy or hard is it for our clients to get into? And then, secondary to that was, what's the economical footprint, right? What are, as well as the global one,
yeah, and environmental impact.
Environmental impact. Yeah. So like with Flow being proof of stake prior to Ethereum moving over, that was a huge like point. Like, look, we're talking about like you can Google 12 times before it uses the same amount of energy of minting one NFT on Flow. And we're doing volumes, man. I don't think people realize, man. We did, and this still might be the most ever, I feel like, 600,000 NFTs when UFC Strike launched, which is on our platform. 600,000 NFTs in like 4 hours. That's a ton of NFTs.
Yeah.
And when you tell somebody you did that, they're like, if they don't know much and they only know Ethereum, they're going to be like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Like that's absolutely impossible. No, not like, so there's definitely the give and the take and the pros and the cons. But for us, it made a lot of sense. Now, will we only be on Flow forever? No. Like we definitely, there's a lot of use case for, layer twos, for, the Solanas, for the Cardanos, which comes next, which comes first, when it happens, I'm not sure, but I do know for a fact, like, Gigantik will allow you to utilize and access those blockchains over time. And we think that makes a lot of sense.
What's the benefit of Gigantik saying, hey, we want to be over here on Polygon? Why not just like go full head of steam? If Flow is working, what's the benefit for y'all to do that?
Brands like to be able to say that they're on Ethereum, right? Like, and if they're on Polygon, they can say they're on Ethereum, and feel like, they can say they're on a layer 2 on Ethereum and feel warm and fuzzy. Or they have projects that are already existing on Ethereum and they would like as least amount of friction moving to a higher volume of NFTs than they would have if they try to do it to Flow, right? You look at a project like Cryptoys, right? There's going to be a whole process there because they launched on Ethereum a year ago, and ultimately the project's going to live on Flow because they're selling digital collectibles that the goal is to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of them eventually a day.
What have been some examples of like successes you've had with products like Players Lounge? I think that is one that we, had on the NFT Live way back in the day that you guys had with Giglabs as one of your clients. I feel like they really hit a niche pretty well, and I think that they're an example you can go with successes. You guys are worked with UFC Strike. Like, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, give me some examples where you guys kind of laid out a strategy and it hit. And then what have you taken from some of these drops and been like, oh, that maybe didn't work as well as we would have liked. Like, let's change it up the next time.
Yeah, I think like for all of them, the ability to pivot is most important, right? Like the thing that I have learned most about this space, tech, startups, life, right? Like one of the major keys to success is the ability to pivot, like to quickly shift gears, to change direction when needed, and adjust. So I would say that like, being flexible is probably what most of these projects are winning are doing well. The Players Lounge is a really good example. Players Lounge, they had a game plan when we first talked to them, and they were like, this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work. This are the mechanics, we're going to do, and I can't remember all the details, but it was like 12,000 and they were going to drop on Ethereum, and there was going to be a PFP, and they were going to, they were going to be like 0.15 ETH or something like that, which at the time, this was January, right? So we're talking about like 3,000 ETH. So it wasn't cheap. And, we talked to them about the benefits of flow, about going at a little bit of a lower price point, also understanding their consumer base, right? And tempering their expectation. And ultimately they ended up adjusting down to, I think, 4,500 total. They were going to launch after the first playoff game, because the Georgia Bulldogs made it to the playoffs. Ultimately, they made it to championships, but their plan was to launch after the first playoffs game. And I begged them. I was like, I think you guys should wait until like right before the national championship.
But you don't know if you're going to get there.
You don't know if you're going to get there, right? Like, but like one was, I thought that
who were they winning? Who were they playing? They were probably playing someone shitty.
No, it was definitely not a guarantee. I mean, we had to play Michigan, I think was the first game.
Yeah, I would take that.
But last year, Michigan was like, but the point there being is that like, I didn't know if they were going to go, but I felt like as a fan of the team, like they probably would. But secondary to that, they needed more time to really understand their project a little more, what they were going to do, how they were going to approach it, what their messaging was, and what the actual interest was. And so they went from 12,000, right? They launch a Twitter, they launch an Instagram, they launch a Discord, and they realized that that's way too much, and the optics would not be good if they only sold half that amount, right? But if they sell half that amount, and they sell it for maybe not so much, right? Like, so, and the good thing is that I told them right off the rip, don't put any information out there about all that. Like, wait until like we're ready. And 4 days, like before like the national championship game, it was like, how many are we doing? And, shout out to the Players Lounge team for like taking everything I gave them as Bible, dude. Because that, like, as a client, as a customer, they took every single thing, and they acted on it, and they executed it. And I think I put a tweet out the other day. I said, execution is everything. It doesn't matter what your idea is. You can have a really cool idea, but if your execution sucks, like, doesn't matter, right?
Well, the other piece that you hit them on, which I think is very good, an example for this space to any project that's trying to launch, is like not setting expectations too high. We've seen Yuga like basically not set any expectations for anything they've ever done. Like that's pretty much it. Like they just drop shit. They don't, have a roadmap. They drop a map that has no timeline. You know what I mean? Like that helps you kind of over deliver in a sense. So that was a great example as well.
They're not setting any expectations, but they are communicating plans, right? And I think that's a big part of what they get right. I think like, I am really I'm really looking forward to the day that I get to sit down and have a conversation with Gordon and the team, right? Because and somebody could probably answer this if they've done more research, cost effective, and chat might know a little more. But I am almost positive that like one of the 4 co-founders is a marketing genius. And secondary to that, someone who understands customer service at a very core level, because they've handled the way they communicate and the way they handle different situations, the way that like a customer service manager would tell them. And that's like where like I come from. I started in like, my first job was working at the mall.
I was laughing when you were breaking that down because it just like flashbacks of wax, which pretty much any wax drop that happened at the time was going to go wrong. And it was going to be Ronin flaming the team on like Twitter or something like that because they didn't fucking communicate. Like
it doesn't take much. And you know what's cool is like, and cool and not cool is that like we've shout out to my colleagues. we've had like a situation that happened where it's like something happened and I was like, and we had a meeting internally and I was like, we should probably tell people about that. Like, and I think, you know, I think as I have learned and has come to like light and as I've communicated recently, the biggest gap I think in this space is like between like the tech nerds who are really hardcore into like technology and you know the currency side of things and the tokens and the tinkering and the cool shit you can do with blockchain. And then there's like the anime, watch your like you know your show every week, binge watch your shows, like collect your things. Like those are the other side of like this space, right? And there's a gap there, and I think like they just don't see it, so they need more people to help them, and that's why like you know like you get that right. And so to point out, basically, we're in this meeting and essentially what happened was is the numbers that people were seeing, their mint number, right? Like if you pulled a X card at, you know, and it was print number 200 or it was print number 4, that was not actually the real number. And it was skewed based on like a number that was, you know, not put in correctly somewhere. And they were like, we'll just change it and we'll update it. Nobody will notice. And I was like, you guys don't really know collectors really well, do you?
Yeah.
Because if a 4 turns into a 404 and a 415 turns into a 15, people are going to be like, what the heck happened? And I'm like, no, nobody's going to notice. I was like, all right, I just want to make sure like people heard my voice. So like 24 hours later, overnight, they fix it. It gets changed. I'll be damned if Discord didn't blow up. And so like, that's just one of the things you learn. And it's just like, they don't understand the level of obsession that people can have over collectibles, right? And this digital like version of them is like just rocket fuel for like people who are into this type of thing.
Yeah.
Now you can interact with this type of engagement from your phone, from your computer, from everywhere.
Well, there's a little built-in like sense of security that people need to have in this space when it comes to protecting themselves. You know, like your ears are up in this space. What I mean, like, so when you make a switch like that, people are very like observant with those things because you need to be. If you're not in this space, you get taken advantage of real quick, and then you get screwed. So the ears are up, definitely. So we're sitting at about an hour here. I want to definitely hit some of these comments. I'm going to give you 2 lightning questions here. One of them is completely off topic, so thank you, Prodigy, for that. Ronin, what would your last meal be, or your all-time favorite meal?
Oh, dude. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a simple man. Dude, and a really, really good slice of pizza. And I mean like a banger slice of New York style pizza. We found that banger outside of Ape Fest. It was awesome. And on the side, there's these things called Peroni rolls that I've only ever gotten at one place by a shop around the corner from where I used to live. And they're these little like croissant rolls, and inside of the swirls, okay, they stuff it with cheese and pepperoni, and then they would bring out this pesto, this basil pesto dipping sauce, and then probably like to top it off, a little bit of ice cream. And if you notice, there's a whole lot of dairy because I can't really do dairy these days. So that would probably be my last meal. And I'm not in a rush, man. I carved out some time, so we don't have to.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I like to leave it at about an hour and 15, or else people start to like view the show and they're like, I don't want to sit there and, you know, listen to an hour and 30 minutes. Like what the heck? And then they never actually listen to it.
I think long form is coming back, bro.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I'll be here
about that.
What's your timeline to offer Polygon at Gigantik?
Yeah, I don't know if like, can I like ping my publicist or whoever that is? Like, can I check with like my, I'm going to say 6 months, 6 to 12 months, but like Yeah.
That's a pretty
6 to
long
12
timeline in
months.
this space.
Like that's, yeah, but like that's like because we have officially not said anything on the subject. So the fact that I said like we're officially bringing something is probably a lot. Not that it really matters. I think that, you know, it's just a plus, right? Like our thing like with Gig is we want the platform to be super flexible. We want it to be easy to use. We want it to facilitate real engagement and activations, right? Like between a brand and its consumers. And we want it to be like, yeah, like super flexible, dude. So that's kind of the goal, and hopefully we get there sooner rather than later. And the good thing is that we are doing really well. Like again, just announced the TokenProof partnership. We've got some other partnerships like that, kind of like in the background we're working on, and that should hopefully bring more and more utility to the platform. That way we can see cool things like, you know, the NASCAR activation last weekend where I got to show up and use their NFTs to get VIP experiences.
I feel like you just hit this, but like any last thoughts on or any last information on Gigantik and Giglabs, definitely drop it now. I got a couple more questions I want to get to before we head out.
Big news there. Like there's, you know, look, what we're doing isn't probably the sexiest thing when it comes to like what people in this, like the normal like Twitter banter and stuff is about. But if you're interested in how this shit is going to like permeate your everyday life in a few years, like that's what we're doing. And that's what we're trying to facilitate. And, you know, if you're interested, Gigantik, it's spelled with a K at the end. I don't need to spell it all. Gigantik.io for you. So you can check that out. It's a really like, it's a excellent site. Shout out to our creative director. He puts together some of the sickest imagery, like out there, dude. He's so talented. I love like working with that dude. So he did the logo and the rebranding. But yeah, you guys can check out the website. It tells a little about like what we do and how we work and what we're about. And if, you know, last thing I'll say on Gigantik is if you work with brands, if you own a brand, if you facilitate brand, you know, experiences and their interest in Web3, and you're looking for a solution for the actual like NFTs, the collectors, the engagement like aspect, how do we get people, you know, how do we get NFTs into people's hands and token gate a Discord or token gate an event? Like, give me a shout, man. My DMs are always open. They're really full. They're really full.
Don't get me started on Twitter DMs, man.
Dude, Twitter DMs, Discord DMs. Right now I got 5 like pending, and it's not from like people that don't matter, man. I love every single person who I've got a little red bubble for, but like it's a lot, you know, and it's a lot coming at you all at once continuously. And so that's something that you have to be like cognizant of. So I say like that with love, like hit me up with a DM seriously. And I promise at some point I will get back to you. It just may not be very quick.
I would interact with my DMs way more if there wasn't this proliferation of like bots and spam and all this stuff. Like it's almost impossible to use, to be honest. Like it almost is. Like Discord's a little bit better, but Twitter feels like they don't really care to solve the issue right now. They've got other things going on. A lot of other questions I want to, well, not a lot of other questions, but a few more questions I want to get to. I did drop the link to Gigantik there in chat if you want to check it out, and you are on that YouTube chat. A couple more community questions that I thought were interesting. Asmodai had this way back when we were talking more about TokenProof and token-gated events, which is zero-knowledge proofs, basically being able to go and show that you have your phone or have your device and be able to get in without maybe showing that you own the actual item. I know that if you don't know about zero knowledge proofs, that sounds a little ridiculous, but it essentially allows you the reputation of saying, hey, I own this without showing your maybe public address or things like this. Do you guys talk about that, like wallet security and zero knowledge proofs at all?
Yeah, like it's honestly not a huge topic of conversation for us. However, like I could imagine a world where TokenProof steps up their interactions in their UI and maybe not even steps up, but maybe just gives it this functionality of maybe hiding a lot more of that information, right? Like the people don't necessarily, and when you use TokenProof, from what I understand, you have the ability to opt out of it, like sharing like your info, right? That you use to connect to the app. So I think there's the ability for people to do that, and I think that right now for us it's not a topic of conversation, but we're very much driven by like client demand. Like, what do we see that we need to be working on now that's going to be useful to our clients tomorrow, so we can keep ahead of the game. Like, one thing I feel very proud of in what we built is that a lot of like our quote unquote competition, they've got the tools to mint, they've got the tools to maybe follow up and do like an airdrop or something along those lines, or create your own custom contract. But how many of them give you the ability to tie collector scores to those NFTs, or assign badges to people who collect, or create challenges that people, time challenges, or the TokenProof utility is built in, right? So these are all things that like we provide that are built into the platform that go beyond just like what we would normally assume these platforms.
Last question I have personally is Bored Ape Yacht Club, Giglabs, other side. Of course, you are a Bored Ape holder. You're in the community. Thoughts on where they are today? I know they haven't, put out anything from the other side in probably a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks with that other side trailer. No events to be seen. I don't think in the next coming months either. So where do you see Bored Ape right now and Yuga?
Man, it's cool to like be having a conversation like this with you, because like 18 months ago, like I would be like, we need more, we need, like it would be a totally different tone. But like where I feel now, and having seen the other side, they're doing their thing, man. They're building, and I trust Yuga. And I think it's one of those things where the community knows what's up. We've got a lot left on that roadmap. When you consider like the roadmap and what's supposed to come next, I think next is like the trial, right? Like the trial of Jimmy the Ape. What does that mean? How's it play out? Where, is this an other side engagement? Is it, a mutant thing, dog thing? What is it? We don't know. But, give them that time, and I think it'll be all right. Like, I think like, I hold my ape, and the conversation comes up a lot with friends and family and my wife. Like, so you're gonna like, what are you gonna do with that ape, right?
Yeah.
Is that to Q's knowledge, to his new knowledge, I have a pimp coat ape. So like, it being like a more rare one is something that I appreciate, but like, I don't think I'll ever not be in the Bored Ape Yacht Club, because I do think that, that's an asset that I would like to pass down to my kids, man, because I do think it is the beginning of something very special, very unique. Even if, what NFTs are, when, my kids get to a point of actually understanding this shit, is not anything like what Bored Apes are about. The fact that like dad's got one, and the fact that like we've had one since mint, and like that's a cool story. It's a tie to a point in human history that I feel like is really important, dude. Like, and yeah, I'm really just like so thankful that like we've had this opportunity, like as just people who were like just having a good time experiencing it, to see some of this really crazy shit happen. To see a digital piece of art go for $64 million at a traditional auction house. To see these apes sell for millions of dollars, to see Fuo go from like that interview 2 years ago,
that was
like
awesome.
being at home and being like miserable, to like being like as successful and accomplished as he has become. I mean, just freaking yesterday, dude, he's getting flowers from Tommy Hilfiger. Like, what's up, dude? The come up has been real for so many people. Just this morning, man, shout out to Humble Beast. Like, that's a guy who started following me a year ago, hit a banger with his very first mint ever at Oni. He sold his first NFT that he bought, was like 33 ETH or something, last August. He just had a kid, man. Like, to see people experience this, man, it's a very unique moment.
That was one of my big takeaways from NFT NYC. It's like seeing a lot of good people winning. Whereas usually usually when you talk finances and you see, people winning in finance, it's always been this kind of nefarious activity, and those people, you kind of look at them, you're like, you probably don't deserve to be having a lot of fun there. You're kind of acting in a negative way. But everybody in the NFT space, at least the ones that I met at NFT NYC, I mean, it was just regular people that somehow got the dub, just caught the space at the right time or what have you. So it is tough seeing that future for Bored Ape Yacht Club as far as like locking down what's going to happen. I feel like with the whole PFP space, it's like we're in this transition period where it's like, what is it going to be next? It's toughest to see that in a bear market, but there's going to be something,
I mean,
there's going to be some evolution. We just can't pinpoint it yet.
Starbucks showed the way, right? Like Starbucks gave you a glance into like what are some of the possibilities of this technology. Then I'm about to drop some more NDA alpha. There are things that will happen in the next 12 to 24 months in more industries regarding Web3 and NFTs that are going to continue to validate the technology and the things that we're doing. They're not going to be in the same way. They're not going to be, it's not going to be touted as like, these stories that, someone goes from zero to $100,000 with one asset. But they are going to be, hopefully stories of people like every single person who's hanging out in chat or who's listening to this, who educated themselves, bettering their lives, right? Because like, this is the next thing. I get asked, often, like, and I'm actually, I've got a couple of speaking appearances for the at the end of the year. One is actually here in Atlanta, Web3 ATL. And the topic of conversation is transitioning to a career in Web3. And I think like that is like key. Educate yourself, take your traditional, whatever you do, and then just apply your knowledge to that industry, right? That career path, and find a company who gives a shit about it, right? Like if it's your company you're at, then do it. If it's not, then find a company who cares and show your worth. Because if you do that, like I promise you, you will see an increase in your pay, an increase in your quality of life, an increase in like your overall happiness, right? Like I know kind of like one of the last topics we want to hit on was mental health. That's something that's huge, man. Like being able to like, transition to something you really enjoy and have a real passion about and make money at the same time is super helpful.
Yeah, one of the last questions in chat, Donar has been absolutely killing it there. Is are you still having fun? Working with clients is different than leading a community. You are on that business side, pretty much on the daily. Whereas, before you went to Giglabs, you were very much just kind of getting after it in the community. What is the difference there? Are you still having fun?
Yes and no. I keep it real. And yes, I am having fun because, there are moments where I get to put together some really cool pitches and some really innovative ideas and get to talk to some really cool people, right? Like people that like I would pay thousands of dollars to get an hour of their time and sit down and ask them questions. And they're sitting there asking me questions, right? But know in that like a lot of that doesn't come to fruition because like a lot of them are still trying to figure this out. They're not ready to really go like, like all the way, like full blown Starbucks integrate Web3 into like our actual native app and things like that. Despite the fact that like I firmly believe, and I think that we're seeing it, that the future of this tech is integrated fully within like the core business, right? You're not going to have this siloed NFT thing. NFTs are going to be part of like what your entire core business is about. It's going to be, your social media outlet and art as Arby's, right? Like it's going to be a way that you connect with an entire generation of people in a really unique way.
That I couldn't end the episode any better than that. I was just getting everything ready to kind of send us out here. Donar, thank you for that question. Ronin, thank you for just giving us your experience and kind of laying down the knowledge of what you've learned in the space for the past 3 years. I'm sure we'll have another discussion here on the Nifty Q Show at some point. So I'm not going to say goodbye. It's going to be see you later. But Thank you so much again for coming on the channel. Guys, Ronin the Collector, head of partner strategy at Gigantik and Giglabs. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube, Twitter, listening afterwards on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Thank you guys very much. This was the Nifty Q Show. We'll be back tomorrow with an episode of NFT Live. Otherwise, Ronin, I'll let you take it out, man. You do it the best.
Man, I appreciate you so much, dude. Thank you so much for having me. This was so like a lot of fun. I really think that there a lot of value comes from these types of conversations for me and for people who get to listen. So thank you for like continuing to host them and for grinding and for doing it as long as you have. I'm really excited for like what comes next for like the network and for what we do and you know, last thing before we cut out, thank you to every single person who's been hanging out, man. Machiavellian, Hash, Don, dude, HD, or Lander. I see you, brother, DJ Savage. I appreciate you guys so much. The questions were awesome. And lastly, that's our vibe, our tribe. Catch you guys later.